and this includes any member of the public who might want to speak. Do you affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, so we will turn it over to the petitioner, and again, because this meeting is being recorded, we want you to identify yourself so the recording will know like who is actually speaking, because we don't have a court reporter in the room. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. My name is Ben Syke, and I'm a senior project developer with New Leaf Energy. I'll be speaking today on behalf of our project, Perkins Road Solar One, LLC. So I'm joined this afternoon by a few colleagues. Down here on the far left is Tricia Fishbein. She's a project engineer with Christopher Burke Engineering, who's our entitlement consultant for this. To my left is Nick Staniford, who's our land use attorney from Shane Banks. And to my right is Fred O'Connor, who's our landowner. So thanks again for having us today. So a short bit about New Leaf. Formerly, we were known as Borrego Solar. We've been in business since the 1980s. We've developed distributed and community solar, so smaller solar, since early 2000s. My team is headquartered in Illinois and Chicago, and we've been active in Illinois for a great many years now. I think some of the very first projects that we've worked were actually in McHenry County, folks might remember. But I think now we've got 36 projects built today that were ours, and then we also constructed another 13 projects for other developers. And we have a great deal of projects under construction right now as well. I think about 18 that we'd expect to have come online in 26 and 27. I think last time I was in front of this board was last year, maybe a year and a half ago, for a project in Nunda Township off Gracie Road that folks might remember. I remember Mr. Cozen noted at the end that it was an anniversary that O'Hare Airport had agrivoltaics and grazing. And that's, I think I told you that because you were younger. I remembered that. So anyways, thanks again for having us. As was already mentioned, the earlier report, this property is located off of Perkins Road in Door Township. Our landowner is the O'Connor family. Again, I have Fred here with me today. The property is zoned ag, and it's currently being farmed, and there is a residence on the property right in here. The family farm has been in the O'Connor family for a long time, since the 1940s. Yeah, so a great deal of time. So our project here is located just off the road. So here's Perkins Road down here on the south, and here's the array up here. This is just under a 5 megawatt AC project. So sort of, as folks have seen, I'm sure, kind of the boilerplate standard community solar project that we see here in Illinois. About 40 acres typically for the array, and then the access road that kind of runs up the middle here into the spine of the project. This is a tracker project, and so I know this board has seen a lot of these and is very familiar with that terminology, but for folks who don't know, a single axis tracker project, these panels basically track the sun throughout the day. So as the sun moves across the sky from the east to the west, the panels track those. There isn't any energy storage proposed on this petition. I know the county's been enormously busy working on an ordinance for energy storage. Although we didn't include it in this ordinance, I can say now that we would like to come back later after that ordinance has been approved, and whether that's an amendment to this SUP or a new SUP to add that later, that's something that we would likely do. But I'm putting it up here now today, just if you see me a few months from now later, just don't be surprised. I know that energy storage and solar are looked at differently in the county, so just want to talk only about this project today, which is just the solar. The access road, we've proposed a gravel access drive off Perkins Road here. There's a little turnaround right here, as well as it's called a hammerhead, so a dual turnaround up here in the top, which is where the equipment pad would be located. The project itself is surrounded with a 7-foot tall agricultural style woven wire fence. So just the intent there, as folks have seen, is to make it look, resemble as closely as you can the natural character of the area. This project, we're really happy with being able to have a nice open field like this because we don't have to take any trees down. There were some trees on Perkins Road, but we were able to basically fish that access road in between those trees. They're probably kind of younger trees anyways, but nonetheless, no tree removal proposed here whatsoever, so we're happy with that. This is difficult to see in this light, I guess, but this is a setback exhibit, and I'll just make a couple key observations here. So the nearest property line is 70 feet away, and that's to the south, right in here. I believe this property line over here is about 140 feet away on the eastern side out here. The nearest road is 575 feet away, so just, of course, our access road, so measured from here to here. And then the nearest non-participating residence is 460 feet away to the east, I believe over here. And there's also a residence down here. I think that measurement is very comparable to that 460 feet as well there. So I think the ordinance is 150 feet away, so we're considerably higher than that. Moving on to our landscaping plan as we proposed here. So typically when you propose these first landscaping plans, we always like to hear feedback in real time. And what's nice about this one is that we've got just the homes over here to the south and the east. We're not necessarily having to propose any screening over here because this is just Fred's O'Connor family property over here, and they're not really asking for that right now. Up here we have some existing kind of foliage and tree line and whatnot. So what we've proposed over here are two different basic lines of trees. We have trees starting up here in the northeast corner that shoot all the way down here to the southeast corner and wrap around a little bit. Tricia, correct me if I'm wrong, these are 25-foot spacing, I think, on these trees. Yeah. And then we also have proposed some trees over here on the actual property line on the east side here. When we looked out on site, that was an area that just wasn't dense with trees, and we wanted to propose some evergreen screening in there to help augment that for those landowners over there to the east. Typically for our projects, we tend to plant from 6 feet tall in height when we plant them. We do that height generally because when we go higher than that, what we see is that there's a transplant shock risk that happens. And a lot of times those trees that are taller than that, you end up having a lot of them die, which just is, one, it looks bad, they have to be replaced, and that just becomes more costly down the line. And I don't think anyone wants to see dead trees out there. So we tend to shoot for that 6 to 7 feet tall, and I'll say that it's something that we've learned over the years in Illinois is generally what takes best. So the panel area itself underneath there, that'd be planted with native grasses and pollinators. We'll talk maybe more about that a little bit in the future with Fred's interest for agrivoltaics in the farm, but for now I'll say that's generally what the composition would be on the inside of the seed mixture. There's also a buffer area around the project itself. So you've got your fence line, then you've got typically a 10 to 15 foot buffer outside of that, which is what you'd also plant with that native grasses and pollinator mix. So around the bases of these red cedars over here on the east, we'd be proposing that similar sort of native grass and pollinator there. And folks here know that the benefits of the grasses and the pollinators in Illinois, one of the best things about them is that you have some sort of ground cover over the soil. I think in the early days in Illinois, and perhaps even in McHenry County when folks were first learning about community solar, folks weren't necessarily planting underneath these projects, and you had this bare soil, and one, you'd get weeds, but you had serious issues with groundwater runoff. What we find with planting these native grasses is that they're actually better for stormwater and runoff than conventional row crops too. Part of that is because of the root structure in these. It's much more dense, and they tend to create better absorption than conventional row crops. So I think now in Illinois it might even be required to do it this way, but I think we've learned over the years, God bless you, that this is generally the best way to sort of cover these projects underneath them too. So per well, two things, per the McHenry County UDO as well as the state of Illinois, we've proposed a decommissioning plan for this project here. One of the nice things about working in McHenry County and having gone through this before is that I think someone told me at one point that McHenry takes all the decommissioning reports and they basically take the averages cost. And so when you come back for your final decommissioning report, like McHenry's already got a lot of really good data points that are informed by us developers. And so, I think we've come in here before, we've always done estimates, and now we're working off data points from the county. So I think we used to say, it costs around $300,000 to decommission a solar project. I think McHenry County estimates I saw for our Gracie Road project were closer to $450,000. So what that means practically for folks who don't know is that in Illinois, per the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement with the Illinois Department of Ag, the project company, so Perkins Road Solar One LLC, has to post a decommissioning bond to the county that covers the full cost to decommission this project. And our estimates here, you'll note too, we don't include salvage values. I say that just because we tend to be a little bit more conservative, even though scrap prices are kind of good for some of this stuff. But we tend to not include those, so this is a higher bond cost than of course, if you include salvage value. And as already mentioned, this AMA requires us to post that decom bond, and then it'll be McHenry County as the named beneficiary. What that means on a very practical level, and I know this board knows, but to say it again, is that if for some reason, the unlikely event that this project were to just go under financially, then there would be this bond set aside to cover the cost to remove that in the unlikely event that the project company was not active. The O'Connor family is also an additional assured on that bond too, which is something they asked for as well during this process. So it's the county and the landowner are both kind of sharing that protection, the public and the landowner. So I'll wrap up with this slide here, and I'll just touch on a couple of benefits from the project. So we would expect that over the first 25 years of the project's life, it would pay around $600,000 in property taxes. That's a significant increase over the existing property taxes that it pays as just undeveloped farmland right now, which has been for a great deal of time. In year one, that translates to about $35,000 in property taxes. And for these solar projects, right, we're not consuming services, we're not burning infrastructure, it's just generally being paid right into the tax base there. For folks who don't know, the way property taxes work in Illinois for solar is that rate and the value of that solar is set by the state. And so basically the project is paying a set amount while also taking into account the local tax rate for those particular properties. So this uses the tax rate that this property has. A project of this scale, about a 5 megawatt project in this particular area, is about an $18 million investment total. That includes $3.75 million in just updates to the ComEd grid. This board's seen a lot of these projects. That might look high to you. That's the highest I've ever had on a project I've developed. And part of that is because we're basically rebuilding a whole section of the distribution system on the south side of Woodstock. Which is helpful for us, we need that, but also it's really good grid hardening for that particular pocket area too. And I'm sure Woodstock would like to grow to the southeast, and this is additional infrastructure that helps them out as well. And then about $8 million of that $18 million is the actual labor costs in Illinois, the skilled labor to put these projects together, your electricians, your laborers. That's a lot of labor that goes into these, and that's about half the total cost there. And in Illinois, solar is very much considered a temporary use. So at the end of the project's life, the equipment's removed, the ground's restored to the state that it was in prior to development. Solar in Illinois, you're not pouring concrete footings and sticking with racking and that. You're typically using a driven pile or a ground screw. So at the end of the useful life of this project, when it gets decommissioned, let's say 25, 30 years or so, you're removing all those buried cables, you're pulling out all the racking, you're removing the modules, and then there's limited concrete pads in the middle for some of your equipment. All it's broken up and removed. So taking the projects down is a relatively straightforward work. And over here, I described a photo of one of New Leaf's prettier sites that we developed. That was off Alden Road in Heartland Township, Alden and McGuire Roads. We sold that project to Nexamp, who owns it, but we developed it. And of the projects that Borrego New Leaf did in McHenry County, that's one that has good photographs of it. So I chose that one. So that's it for my, I guess, original remarks or comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the group or the public would have of us.
Do you want to do, that's your whole presentation? I was going to say if anybody else wanted to talk, we just let them talk and then we just answer all the questions, but that's good.
No?
Okay, we'll start with questions on my left. Mr. Rosen.
The Bernhardt Utzer, is that an outlot?
It's a separate, it's a separate landowner than the O'Connor family, correct? Yes.
Right, so they're not part of the property.
Correct.
And then the setbacks for that lot is 50 feet.
I think it's 70 feet off the property line on that one, yeah, from the module to the property line.
The illustration C20, and I'm bouncing between various technologies, shows us 50-foot property line setback.
Can you talk about what page you're looking at?
Oh, this was, sorry, it was the paper handout.
Oh, okay.
It's,
So you're looking at the layout and materials plan?
Conditional use permit set, C-2.0, layout materials plan in smaller print.
Okay. So we're all looking at the same page.
Yeah, so the setback line showing 50 feet, which is just a buffer that we drew around it, right? So that shows that setback, but the actual setback as measured from the module to the property line is 70 feet though.
So how should we correctly note that on this drawing so
Oh,
that?
it's on there. There's a notation, see where
Again,
it's.
identify yourself, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick Standiford, I'm a land use attorney from Shane Banks, 70 West Madison in Chicago. On page C-2.0, above where it says that 50-foot property line setback, there's a little arrows that show 70.1 feet. So that would be the notation that we would direct the board to.
Okay,
That's the distance from the panels to the property line of the southern neighbor.
all right, thank you. The panels themselves, are they bifacial?
Yes.
Details on the plant maintenance, since you brought that up. Since you also talked about my favorite subject, the goats, how do you see yourself going forward with that?
I think the intent is to deploy some sort of agrivoltaics program on this property. I'm saying that with a little bit of like lack of certainty right now because we've never done it where the landowner is involved in that. In this instance, Fred's really interested in doing agrivoltaics on that property. And that's something that you can talk about that later if you'd like, but that's something that's important to Fred. And we're still figuring out what exactly that would look like and if it's gonna be something that's as simple as what you guys typically see. I'm sure the board shouldn't assume, but I'm guessing is like sheep grazing out there probably, right? And whether that's the outcome or if it's growing some sort of like niche like seed, right? Things of that nature. So in the actual array, that's something that we're still figuring out if Fred's gonna take that on. If he doesn't, then it'd probably be a conventional just grazing. The outside perimeter though, for maintaining that, would be probably just mowing for the most part outside the fence line.
The details on the equipment area, the noise, if you could just do a high view.
Yeah, so there is I might have a slide on this actually. So generally speaking, the noise is going to be limited to the inverters on the equipment pad, which is centrally located in the project. We're going to see some bars over here. So this first range in here at around 30 or was that 40 or 30 right there? 30 decibels. So 30 decibels, which is largely going to be kind of kept within the fence line, at least on this side over here. In the middle of the day, so when the sun's at its highest, the inverters are running on full power. Those inverters are going to make noise at that 30 decibels. That's the equivalent at that level or inside there of probably like the humming of a refrigerator. That's going to be isolated in here to the actual fence line, as you'll see. This outer bar, which I think this is 25 decibels out here, that's akin to like a whisper. So that 25 decibels, which would be present in this pocket over here and all around, you would hear that, if you could even hear it over the ambient sound. That would just be in the middle of the day though, typically around like maybe 11 to 1 o'clock when the sun's at its highest.
So to the east, there are some squares that are identified as typical residences. Utilizing that as the overlay, do they fall within which zones of your?
They would fall in the 25 decibels over here. So basically the ambient noise kind of equivalent is where they fall.
And again, the definition of ambient noise, so I'm a 5-year-old.
I don't know if I have a great definition for ambient noise. Probably what we typically would expect if you stood out there and just heard the wind blowing, leaves rustling, things of that nature.
The maintenance for Perkins Road, would you know that? Who has a jurisdiction for that?
This is a township road, honestly.
I understand.
Yeah.
When construction occurs, how long are you projecting for this facility?
How long would construction take for the
Yes.
facility? Approximately a year. That tends to vary. A lot of times you're waiting on the utility, so ComEd in this case. I would say anywhere from probably 9 to 12 months is standard. Yeah.
And then when you were talking about the armoring of the distribution grid, hardening, excuse me, which has that already been accepted by ComEd?
Yeah.
And then what is your projected expense for what ComEd is asking of you of that?
Yeah, so it's already been accepted. We have a signed interconnection services agreement with ComEd. We completed that, I think, this summer. ComEd requires that you fully fund that interconnection upgrade at the time of signing or shortly after you sign that agreement. So that was a $3.75 million expense, and we funded that fully with the cash deposit with ComEd. It's probably around this summer, give or take a little bit. But yeah, what they're doing for the upgrade, I wish I had more of a zoomed out map here, but what they're doing for the upgrade is they're stringing a new three-phase,
Why don't you use the there you go.
yeah. So they're gonna string a new three-phase line right around Perkins Road over here, and they're gonna, and then if Dean Street is somewhere over here, I wanna say, they're also gonna basically reconductor that line running north to south. And there's actually a substation in Woodstock, it's quite a ways up here, right? If there's the map, still the map. I can't remember the crossroad for that substation. Yeah.
What is this?
47.
Oh, wait,
I
47.
think it's because 47 curves, right? It's just north of 47 and Dean Street, so it's to like the west, I think, of that. But it's a large substation that takes a 138 kilovolt ComEd transmission line and steps it down to voltage. And that substation is the same one that actually services all the load in Woodstock, including probably where we're at right now.
So it's not just exclusively for your facility?
Correct, yeah.
In the design of the facility, this hardening, yes, is accommodation being made for battery discharge on this facility?
So the way it's designed right now, it doesn't contemplate energy storage. If we wanted to add energy storage, then it's like an additional agreement that we'd have to conduct with ComEd. However, the way that they upgrade the lines though would generally allow for energy storage. So if we did come and ask for that in the future, it wouldn't necessarily trigger a new upgrade with ComEd. They basically aren't building to, assuming that folks are gonna add batteries to solar projects.
Would the operational time of the inverters be different with battery storage on this property?
Yeah, it certainly could vary. But I think if anything, what we'd see is that if a conventional, you need like a whiteboard to do this, but if we had like a conventional distribution of power over the day, looking like this for solar, so I'm drawing a curve, right? With solar, that's gonna continue to have the same peak, but it's gonna be a little bit flatter for the distribution. So yeah, you would hear a little bit more, maybe a little, I guess it'd be a little bit later in the day if anything, because generally with the way the batteries are gonna work is they're gonna capture all that excess production that the solar can't export. It's gonna deploy that shortly after the solar's out. I know I said I was going to talk about batteries, but I'll just say that the reason that we like batteries a lot and the utilities and ratepayers like batteries is because as with this curve with solar that's drew here, we don't really consume peak electricity at noon or 1 o'clock, right? In fact, what we see with the grid is that electricity demand tends to spike later in the day around 4 or 5, which is really unfortunate for solar because that's when solar is kind of tapering off as the day goes on. And that's why in Illinois we're really lucky and we have very stable power prices because people built these vast nuclear plants and facilities, and now we have gas plants. The way that you make solar more valuable to the grid is you add those batteries, which, to answer your question, is to extend that power, power injection later in the day too.
Could you just, do you have any details on that property tax distribution by taxing body?
Yes. I don't know if I have that in your slides, so I'm sorry for that, but I think I have it somewhere in the many slides that we have here. I hope this answers your question. I can tap through them here. Yeah, I mean, the lion's share here go into School District 200, which is, of course, normalized, for property taxes in schools. Truly, the lion's share of this is largely going to that, but then the remaining bodies being Woodstock Fire, the county itself, Kennedy County College here, Door Township Road and Bridge, Conservation District, the library in Door Township. So the expected 25 years property taxes this school district would be around $430,000. The next 2 and 3 are Woodstock Fire with $67,000, and then the county with $41,000.
When you mentioned the fire district, in terms of safety, have you reached out to the district, or what is your general business plan in that end?
Yeah, we have reached out to the fire district as well as the township road. I don't think we've actually gotten our responses back yet at this point. That's something that, of course, we follow up on throughout the process, particularly when you get to building permit, because we have to sign off anyways, I'm assuming.
And then besides the fence, what other securities do you have in place for this facility?
Yeah, there will always be a Knox box located at the gate, and the gate here is going to be at the southern portion of the fence lines. The Knox box, of course, allows emergency services to access the facility. That'll be located right here next to the gate. There's also going to be a lighting system right here in the equipment pad. That's a motion-activated light. It's downcast, it's shielded, and that will only come on in the event that it need to get accessed in a low-light situation or if there's some sort of emergency typically.
So this facility is connected to the internet or whatever on a 24 basis?
Yeah, so it is remotely monitored 24/7, 365 too. So if there were some sort of issue going on, and not talking about a fire, but if there was like, for instance, like in operations and maintenance, if you notice that an inverter isn't performing the way it is, or a certain portion of it, the grid or the array isn't performing the way that you think it should, then you'd be seeing that in real time, then we'd be able to send someone out there to go look at that.
I turn on to another. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Donner.
Since he's asked all of my questions and you have answered them, I have nothing to add at the moment.
Mr. Kern.
Yeah, I just have a few questions and comments. I note from that at least the soils in this area, this is not a sensitive aquifer recharge area, correct?
I think it's my understanding, yeah.
And there's no high leachable soils in this area as well, correct?
I don't know if I could comment on that, I'm not entirely sure.
No highly permeable soils, I think is what the reports are that
From
we have.
that sounds from like the natural resource inventory. Yeah.
And I note that you're staying out of the wetland areas over in the northeast corner and the southwest corner.
Yeah, yes.
Now, one question I have is looking at C-2.0, which shows the screening, the vegetative screening. Along the rear of the homes that are on, I believe, Chucker, is that how you pronounce the road name?
Yes.
It doesn't include a couple of the properties on the north. And I'm assuming that's because it looks like the wetland, finger of the wetland extends down the rear of those properties. I guess my question is let me ask the question point blank, why doesn't the vegetative screening that you have right at the rear property lines extend further up north to cover all of the properties?
Yeah, the reason that we did this is originally we were proposing the screening at the actual fence line of our project. We chose to insert the screening here because we just didn't notice any existing vegetation there. Some of these other homes over here, they've got existing tree line, and this area just didn't. So we proposed it on the property line there just to help augment the visual screening for the folks who live there. It wasn't necessarily because of any wetlands, just because we saw existing tree line up here, and we didn't propose any additional.
Okay, because they currently have vegetative screening.
That was our understanding, when we were out there last.
That's all I have, thank you.
Ms. Gardner.
Well,
Very scary.
yeah. I thought there was somebody between me and Bill besides you. Just staying on the screening, is 25 feet apart for these, did you say they're red cedars? Okay, is that close enough to actually screen? Because it feels to me like that's kind of far apart, especially in the first 10 years before they, really fill out.
Yeah, it's a good question. We typically come in with like 25-foot off center, and then if we're requested to tighten that to like 15 feet, then we do that too. The only reason we like 25 feet to start is because it becomes a lot easier to take care of those trees as they get old. And
I'm sure.
Yeah, and like eastern trees, they grow so rapidly, and they do tend to get pretty wide too. So the 25 feet is meant to be sort of like the long-term view on having those trees planted, and allows us, frankly, just to not have to go out there and trim between them after a year, like 10.
Yeah,
12,
I
whatever.
understand the concerns on your part, but seeing this from the homeowners over there, from their viewpoint,
Sure.
it sounds to me like it'd be a long time before that would actually be screened.
They're two different existing screening. This to us, then we have 2 rows, basically.
You saying added?
No, I'm saying you already have.
Yeah, I would say is like if there's a request to tighten that up, then we're happy to do that without any issue. We tend to come into 25 feet, but if it was preferable for everyone to tighten it up into 15 feet, and then we would add additional trees to create the same length, and that's not an issue for us to do that.
It'll also help that it's basically 2 rows of screening, because there's the
For some
existing
homes,
screening.
yes, for
And then
not
they're-
all of them.
But they're adding a second row.
I think we're fine with we're fine, just tighten it up to 15 feet, and yeah,
Okay, can we make that a condition then?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I'd also encourage you to keep in touch with the homeowners along that eastern side, that southeastern side, to just get their feedback on it. Because I can't speak for them, I don't really live there, so I don't really know what they see now, what they're going to see, et cetera. Now, I think, the residence on the property, is that occupied?
Yeah.
You live there? Okay, you being Fred O'Connor?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And Fred, I do have a question for you. You're the one that's interested in the agrivoltaics, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and are you thinking in terms of sheep grazing?
Sheep in a solar area is a very helpful thing. You don't want to have goats because they jump on the
We know that,
platforms,
yeah.
but
We
the
like
sheep-
them, but we know that.
I understand, yeah, so yeah, I would think that is something very much welcomed and considered in our plan.
Okay, do you have sheep?
We've had them in the past.
Well, you should have kept them, because I hear they're in great demand, and there's a long waiting list for the sheep to come and graze on the solar farms.
Yeah,
So I think that's about all I have for you. Let me double check, I think that's it, thank you.
Mr. Schnabel.
The only one that I haven't heard answered yet, and I don't know if it's been asked, is New Leaf planning to maintain ownership of this project?
It's a good question. If it were a year ago, I would have told you no, we don't own them, we just develop them and we sell them. We're actually going through the process of becoming what's called an independent power producer, so we would own them. For the past, since 1980s, but really since the early 2000s, we've sold every single project. This is one that we're trying, or I'm advocating for internally to keep, because it is a little bit more of a unique project with some of the agrivoltaics that we've talked about, and things of that nature. Plus McHenry County is, of course, a good place to do business. So I'm not really answering your question because I'm not entirely sure at this moment. I would say that like, if ever I've had a project, this is one where I would say it's a coin flip of maybe keeping it. But if not, it would go to one of our probably 2 or 3 partners that we worked with in Illinois over the past 10 years.
Describe how they would be.
Yeah, and I know this board knows as well too, but the owner of the system would of course be subject to the same requirements that we were, the project owner, and the same, all the conditions set forth in the.
So that's fair enough. I don't have anything additional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dolan.
Can you define community solar project?
Sure. I do have a slide, I guess, yeah. So Community Solar Illinois is a very specific program that the state came up with or introduced years ago. The primary idea being that it was a mechanism for ratepayers and consumers, people like you and me, to be able to participate in the economic benefits of solar. Frankly, community solar benefits to an average ratepayer, it translates to like a 10% reduction in the total bill, but really just the electricity portion of it. So it ends up being like, frankly, in a conventional bill, not a whole lot. But what's nice about those is that for folks who can't or are unable or just don't want to have solar panels on their roof, they're still able to participate in that. So I live in an apartment. I can't have solar panels on my apartment, I guess. But I do subscribe to a project. I didn't develop the project, unfortunately, but it's out in DeKalb County. And that's a way to get a little bit of savings, but also kind of feel like I'm participating in solar too. We like these programs because typically when we think about renewable energy, there are these large 500,000 acre solar farms that are exporting power to the utilities and to large ratepayers. Today, that's like a data center. I used to say it's like a manufacturing facility. Now we say data centers because those are the load entities now. But that was like that for years. And when community solar rolled around in the United States years ago, it became a good program for folks to be able, just normal folks like us, to be able to participate in that.
Talk about how it's limited to 5 megawatts.
Yeah, and these projects are also limited in scale too. So these are, community solar in Illinois cannot be any larger than 5 megawatts AC. So they're typically smaller. They're all around 35, 40 acres in size. I know this board's seen a lot of those projects back in like 18 and 19, and they were 2.5 megawatts in size was the max in those days under the lottery program. And folks remember that, I think, the ADP's lottery program. And they increased that to 5 megawatts. And really all the federal incentives were always capped at 5 megawatts. And so projects were never going to get larger than that for these community solar ones. But just to wrap that up, I'd say like the large projects, like these 100 megawatt, 150 megawatt sites, those can't be subscribed to by normal folks. Those are just always going to be producing power for a utility or a large company.
Okay, thank you. You did mention the variety of trees you're going to be planting. How did you pick that variety?
Honestly, the Eastern Red Cedar is something that we've been speccing in Illinois for years because it's a very agreeable tree. What I'll flag though typically is that when we're going through the final building permit design plans, we do consult with the county, and if they have, or the conservation district too, I suppose, if they have a specific or preferential species of tree or brush or shrub or whatever, then like we take that into consideration. Just because, you know, Eastern Red Cedar might not grow particularly well in all the soil types in this property, and we're trying to get something that's going to last and be maintained for the life of the project. Yeah, or if anyone had input, I suppose, on that matter, neighbors or otherwise, we would be all ears.
Okay, that leads into my next question. The eastern line of trees, would you consult with the neighbors there as to what they wanted to look at?
We haven't consulted with them, but if neighbors had an input on what they'd like to see for tree species or vegetative screening, then I would certainly be open to hearing that.
Unless it's all Japanese maples or something.
No. I have screens at my house and I, have my preferences, so.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. First, as we're talking about agrivoltaics and that sort of thing, I was wondering, as you're looking into options, if you've done any contact with U of I, who's doing a lot of research into agrivoltaics. Yeah, excellent. I'd like to ask more about this $18 million that's going into this project, including the upgrades. So there's a lot more than just this little project you're putting money into. And is this something that ComEd said that you would have to do in order to get down to their, is it the substation is down on 176?
Yeah.
The substation is on, we're 47 curves over Dean Street. There's
47 doesn't curve over Dean
Well, I
Street.
said around 170.
It's 176, yeah.
176.
Yeah. And I think it's like a Wagner might be the actual, there's like a little stub street back there. And that's a ComEd-owned substation. Yeah, it's a rather large one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So this one is basically gonna intersect into that substation.
So it's actually south of this property.
Oh, I'm sorry. So there is that substation down there. This is the one that's north of there, actually. So there's a substation that's actually in Woodstock proper.
Wagner, you got it right here.
It is Wagner, yeah, okay. So 14, US Highway 14.
Just north of 14.
Yeah, in Dean Street.
Just to the east.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this one's north. There's the one to the south. This is to the north, the other one we're talking about.
Okay, so a smaller one.
Well, the one to the north is actually a substation that services Woodstock. The one to the south is more of a switch yard, which is taking a really, really high voltage and making it a slightly less high voltage.
Okay.
So that never, if you think of them like an expressway, that's taking like an interstate and stepping it down to like, that's taking like a toll road to a smaller interstate, basically. Whereas the substation we're talking about up off 14 and Dean and Wagner, that one is kind of like going off a interstate to a highway road. And so this substation is one that services all of Woodstock. There's maybe 6 or 7 substations in McHenry County that are configured this way, that basically have a distribution system and a transmission system. And so this is affecting that particular substation.
So will that really have a much greater benefit to the community of Woodstock?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, because it's the problem with the Woodstock substation, I don't know if ComEd would call it a problem, but I will. It's an older system, and it's got a lot of older three-phase line, which is what we connect to. And they're 12.5 kV kilovolt. And those lines were built years ago, maybe even the 50s and 60s sometimes. And they were built to service just a lot less electrical demand. And what we saw over the past 60, 70 years in the United States was just flat electrical demand. Electricity growth was never really growing, and part of that is because you had energy efficiency and LED lights and things like that. But now we're in this very strange and uncertain time where we have an enormous amount of electricity growth and demand that no one for years had ever forecasted. And we were saying that for a long time about electric vehicles being this big source of demand. And then all of a sudden the data center thing happened, and then AI happened on top of that, whatever that means, and that just blew everyone out of the water for the estimates. And so now what we're going to see is more and more strain on the electricity system. And a lot of times, I don't want to speak for, you might see a data center folks come in here one day, so I don't want to besmirch them, but they don't have to pay for these upgrades a lot. They just show up like a ratepayer, and that cost gets spread across the consumers. When you inject power, though, on the production side, like what we're proposing here, we have to foot 100% of that bill. And we had to pay it 6-7 months ago, and we're actually going to build the thing for a while, right? So, yeah, we had to pay for those upgrades, and those are going to be shared by the public on the Woodstock substation. That really services all of Woodstock proper.
So that's another real benefit to community solar then, in my mind, is that it's not being sold to some big data center, it's in your own little community. Now, I know people then can subscribe to community solar. Some petitions in the past, because they've had residences around them, have said that we'll have a certain period of time and you can be the first people to subscribe if you want to. And it's like 10% savings on your electric bill?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to, talk to these neighbors and give them first opportunity to subscribe if they'd like to get that benefit as well?
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, we love local subscribers, local ratepayers are wonderful for these kind of projects. If it's a neighbor, that's the best subscriber you can have, I think.
And just please make sure that they understand that it's not really 10% off their total bill.
Yeah. I tried to say that earlier, it's like just the electricity portion of it, it ends up being maybe $120 a year or something like that, But it's also, you're not paying anything to participate in that, so it is. I agree with you, it's limits league. But then again, power prices are going up dramatically, and maybe it'll mean more. So.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Kim, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Before we have the questions from the public, would you just go through the state standards that we have to, as far as citing and the law that we have to follow?
Yeah, so this comes right from Public Act 102-1123. A request for a conditional use permit for a commercial solar energy facility shall be approved if the request is in compliance with the standards and conditions imposed within the act, the zoning ordinance adopted consistent with this code, and the conditions imposed under state and federal statutes and regulations. A county may not adopt zoning regulations that disallow commercial solar energy facilities from being developed or operated in any district zoned to allow agricultural or industrial uses. So essentially, the county is mandated to approve these as long as certain siting standards set forth by the state are met.
But we have some things that we can do, like changing the trees and those sorts of things. Okay. All right, so at this time, is there any member of the public who would like to ask questions at this time regarding the testimony here? Okay, I'll have you come up here on my right. I'll use the timer on my phone, and we will give you your 3 minutes. I'll need your name and your mailing address, where you live, and then you'll have your 3 minutes to ask questions, sir. So
How
please,
much time do I have for this?
3 minutes, so you can.
This is only for questions. Right.
And if you want to, you just ask all your questions and then they can answer them. If you're worried that you're going to run out of time, they'll have more time than 3 minutes to answer them, but you have 3 minutes to talk. So, okay, go ahead.
My name is Bernie Unsner, 13402 Perkins Road. I have that 5 acres on that lot, on that spot. We were the
Want to
dairy.
go up and point it out to us?
Yes, that spot right there.
Okay.
My wife and I have been there since we got married, 1976. But that isn't my questions. I have questions as what I gotta indicate is, one of the concerns is, I've been looking at a lot of different websites and everything else, is when you decommission these things in 25, 30 years, or even 40 years, where's the money coming from? And how do you guarantee the money's gonna be there? And how much is today's cost for decommissioning it at today's dollar? Obviously, 25 years now, that's be a different number, but it's a number that we won't understand. If you use today's dollar, this is what I'm asking.
Do you want to keep going and then I'll answer all of them at the end?
Well,
I want to get, I want to get yours
3
in.
minutes.
You want to get yours in,
And
yeah.
then the other question is, how are you guys gonna keep it mowed and cleared and so forth? Are you gonna raise sheep in there? Animals to mow it? I'm being facetious, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just one I'm kind of
Yeah.
letting up on what's going on there.
Sure.
The question I assumed is do you have any photographs of water, rainwater, over the last 10, 20, 30 years? And the reason I ask that question is I have some photographs that might add to that. These are old photographs from, one of them was about 2 years ago, of the floods that we've had on the, it's the southeast corner, directly east of my property. It's all flooded. And we've been tiling that for years, and it's a different story about tiling. It's
That's all the questions?
for now.
For now? Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. If I'm not mistaken, this actual, I know this is yours right now, but you previously owned this whole area, didn't you?
We owned 80 acres, 40 on this side and 40 on the other side.
Okay. All
We
right.
sold it in 2015.
Okay. So to go back in reverse order here, so the first question I asked about the decommissioning, the time and the money. So what's set aside in Illinois is this thing here, so well, part of this. We had to prepare a summary of decommissioning cost to the county, and that's gonna go into detail about like the things, what goes into removing the panels, reclaiming the gravel road, break up the concrete, things like that. We quote that in today's dollars, and we also need to expect an inflation adjuster for that. Then we propose 2% in here. I don't actually remember if McHenry County provides feedback on that, but basically it does try to account for inflation that way. And then I'm not sure about this one, but does McHenry require us every 5 or 10 years to reevaluate that? 10 years. So every 10 years, McHenry requires us to reevaluate that against actuals to see how that's actually inflated.
So you don't know what it costs per acre?
What was the question?
How much does it cost per acre in today's dollar?
Well, I don't have it per acre, but I had the total today. It would cost $250,000 to fully remove that solar project. After it's been, but after 20 years, it'd be $465,000 though.
And where's that money at today?
So that gets posted at the time of construction of the decommissioning bond. So it's a bond, and they'll post it to McHenry.
It's like a trust.
Yeah, exactly. The other questions were around mowing and the sheep grazing. So if we and Fred choose to do actual sheep grazing here, typically in Illinois, you don't see the keeping and raising of the sheep on that property. Yeah, they become kind of like nomadic, so people will bring in the sheep, they'll truck them in, they'll drop them off for however long it takes those sheep to mow it down, and they'll leave. If we choose to do that, unless you want to be a full-time sheep, shepherd, which is, your choice, that could be something. And then the question about the rainwater too, I don't have a great answer for that, but what I would note is that we are avoiding that southeast pocket down here, which I think you commented on.
Show your panel.
Yeah, we are avoiding this area here in that wet spot, which is also right here. But we were mindful at least of like the flooding issues that could happen up here. I don't know if you've ever seen a flood up there, but this is technically a flood zone, so that's why, just for folks' awareness, why we kind of tapered this corner down and then beveled that edge to avoid the flood. So I hope I answered your questions, but thank you though.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to ask questions? Okay, come on up.
I am Diane Magnuson. I live at 3316 Chucker. I also own 3409 Chucker, which is the low spot on the map. My questions.
You want to point it out to us where it is?
No, it's all right.
Okay, okay.
So I understand that there's 2 evergreen buffers planned, but why are they 100 feet apart? If you were to, you've already addressed decreasing the on-center differences. If you staggered the 2 tree buffers, it would do a lot more for us that are all there in the neighborhood. So that's a question. And then I've heard only 1 variety of tree. Would it not make sense to have multiple varieties for die-off? What's the plan for replacing trees over the next 3, 5, 25 years? How far off of the eastern boundary will the trees actually be planted? Let's see, What's going to happen with the, what I figure is roughly 100 foot between the tree buffer and the fence line? So I'm so hearing impaired, I may be missing some of these answers. Are the sheep running inside or are they running outside as well? Can we have the buffer seating material in between the array and our eastern borders and the trees? What have I missed? I think I've covered most of my questions.
Very good.
And really quick, too.
Thank you for the questions, very good ones. So the first question about staggering trees. So when we initially proposed the 25-foot spacing over here, off center, and we sort of capitulated in the meeting to go to 15, well, capitulated, I don't know if I capitulated, I feel like I offered it, but yeah, 15 feet space. So that would be very easy to go to 15 foot off center. If it was actually preferred by the neighbors to maybe we like keep that or move that to 20 foot off center, and then we just put a second row behind it, immediately behind it, and stagger them, we could do that too. That tends to look better than just a single row, but I would be open to either.
I forgot a question. Can I add one?
Go ahead.
Could you put the trees on a little bit of a berm?
No.
County can't require that.
Well, the berms, we've done the berms before. The challenge with berms, they create a lot of stormwater issues, like ponding, so we don't like to do those, but it's a good question. Oh, this is a better view, you're
Do you
right.
want to maintain the
So-
line of the existing with the new? Is that what
See
the-
that dark spot?
That's why you wouldn't
That's
stagger them up
key.
next
You're
to
right
each
here,
other.
okay. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, so we can, I'm more than open to switching up how we approach this line here, whether it's just tightening them up or doing, just staggering them too. I think staggering is better, but different varieties, to answer that question, yes, we can do different varieties. I'm very much open to that. I'm open to suggestions, or if the county has proposals too for different varieties. Am I on the clock for responses?
No,
Okay,
you're not.
okay. I can go,
Just a
go
question.
faster. I got it right here.
You're
Yeah.
talking in my 3 minutes.
No, we're good. So for monitoring and maintenance of those and replacement, that's something that's our responsibility to monitor and maintain those plants. I don't know if the county checks up on compliance for landscape screening. Is that something that the county?
Don't worry, I will.
I know you will.
We're basically checking to make sure that it's not dying.
Yeah, okay, because that's an important one. So I know in other counties, they weren't really doing that in the beginning, and so like we had some projects out in Will County, and ours weren't, but our neighbors' projects they built, they had some trees that were dying, and that became a sore point with everybody, so I think counties audit now to make sure they're not dead. But if you were to see them, then yeah, you would have our contact information, and you'd be able to notify us, and we'd have to get it fixed. Or you can always bother Fred too. How far off the boundary of the property line? I don't know if we got into, we probably have indicative details here, maybe not, yeah. I'm guessing we probably would put them off the boundary line just enough so when they grow up fully, they're not hanging over the property line and like trespassing. I don't know if trees can trespass, but we wouldn't want that. So I don't know if that's maybe like 15 or 20 feet off the property line perhaps. Sheep?
What can you plant in the buffer zone?
Yeah, I'm not there yet. Sheep, if there were to be sheep, that would be mowing, so to speak. They would be isolated to just the fence area. And so what you typically do is you cart the sheep in, you drop them off in the fence area, they'd run wild in there, do their thing, and you kind of collect them and take them out and leave. The actual buffer area around it, that would also be planted with like the seeds and the grass mix, native grass mix. That would just be conventionally mowed, and whether Fred would want to do that, or if we would just be doing it, that'd be just mowed conventionally. And then the buffer area. Okay, so this is where's my thing at? I have This area here is about 100 feet from these trees to the property line, maybe a little tighter down here from these trees. And Trish, tell me if I'm wrong on that, but I think we're about 100 feet, let's call it. It's a little awkward. Normally, you want to leave enough space when you're making these solar things, these projects, to have enough room to do 1 or 2 sweeps for the planter if they want to keep planting it. So we originally designed it that way, that it could continue to be farmed conventionally, like, you know, corn or beans. But Fred's got ideas about what he wants to do in there with an orchard, perhaps, other trees. Right now, we're just kind of assuming it's going to continue to be just farmed in between there. But that's something that I think Fred still has to decide what he wants to do, because our rights basically end just outside of this tree line here for the solar project.
Okay, I think you covered it.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions?
So, Ed Zarowski, 3505 Chucker Place. So I am Diane, and I am here, okay? Problem what we have is, what do we do about that water that comes in every year? And the problem is you can see it here, the water runs here, through here, into that low area. What do we do about it?
Yeah, I think one thing I would say about solar and the way you're required in Illinois to do this is kind of an illustration here. When you've got conventional corn and beans, you've got roots that look like this. So what happens with groundwater is the groundwater wants to sit on top of it and wants to move. That's why we've got swales everywhere. That's why you contour the ground. A lot of times you can't really just fix that with grading and contouring or whatever. What you see with solar in Illinois, though, is because we're required to plant these native grasses and pollinators, you have a lot denser of a root structure like this over here, and so you see a lot better groundwater infiltration. So I don't think it's going to just make that go away. I don't think it's going to solve this water issue in ponding. I do think it would probably noticeably improve that, though, after it's been planted and growing there. I think part of this field is tiled. I heard Bernie say it was tiled. Part of this, too, for solar is that when we go through construction, we have to do what's called, well, we do it before, we do what's called a drain tile survey. It's probably self-evident. We go out there and identify where all the tiles located. A lot of times what we see in Illinois, even if it's like a newer poly tile, a lot of times during construction we try and design around it, but we end up having to retile large portions of underneath these projects because it's especially if it's, I don't know if it's pattern tile or not over there, but like portions probably could be. We probably have to do a lot of retiling in here anyways, and so that would very likely help offset that too. The last thing I'll say is that solar projects around the time of construction are subject to a SWIP. Yeah, see, I'm not an engineer, but I know that acronym. So stormwater or something.
Pollution prevention plan.
There you go, the lawyer knows. Stormwater pollution prevention plan. So like that's gonna require a lot of like silt screen fencing too to help contour that water around the project area there. So that's a permit that we're required to seek. I don't know if that's from the county, actually, if that's from the federal permit, but anyway, so that's 3 different mitigants there. I don't think they're gonna just fix this. I don't know if it's actually a pond or is that just water that's sitting right there?
Seasonal pond.
Seasonal pond. Okay, do you want the pond to go away?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can make it go away entirely from our work over here, but I do think it would be less pronounced than it is today.
That can be as deep as 4 to 5 feet.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna be able to move all that water out of there. From
Okay, but the main problem is there's a drain tile that runs through here and through these yards that we paid for years ago. And if this isn't maintained in here, this becomes a problem.
You're not gonna be boring or
Yeah,
piling in there.
we won't be doing any actual earthwork in this corridor here next to that tile line. That would just continue to be farmed unless Fred does do some sort of like a tree planting or orchard in here with some grasses too. But that area is not something that we would be working in necessarily in there. It won't just turn to weeds in here. It'll either be farmed in this pocket or it'll be converted into an orchard for Fred's work.
Okay, does anyone else have a question?
Scott Kunze, 3415 Chucker. I'm next to the pond, next to Ed. I'm right here. It's not deep enough to fish, but sometimes I can fish out of my pool. So I'm hearing about trees and water for the most part. Am I allowed to ask a board member a question or an opinion?
No.
Okay. So I would like to hear this gentleman's opinion about the buffer. He's obviously got some experience. He's in Illinois, he's in McHenry County. I'd like to hear him, what his suggestion would be. You say you would be in communication with the neighbors. Number one, how do you expect to do that? Okay, that's question number one. Number two, water. I've lived here for 32 years. Yep, we've had a water problem. So the question is, once the solar farm comes in, the runoff of panels, any channeling, any new or additional problems that I haven't seen in 32 years, what would be our, what would we do? How would we address that? How would you address that? Do we have to complain to the county and then they go ahead and they contact you? The drive. I see the drive going in, we know where it's at, it's just north of Unzer's. When you construct this, is that going to be the drive that's going to give you access for the next 4 years? And the same drive that's going to be used for construction? Meaning, am we going to see for 1 year all sorts of vehicles going up and down that, that just changed? It just changed?
That's changing, yeah,
Okay.
sorry. It's good
Are we gonna see vehicles going up and down there, or is it gonna be right in that center area? And then I did read the report on values. Just give me your opinion at the end of, when you answer these questions. Do you really feel that the 5 examples, that there were absolutely no value drops accurate? Are you comfortable with that? Thank you.
Sure. Me too.
So I would say.
Identify yourself.
Yeah, Nick Standiford from Shane Banks, land use attorney. How to communicate with the neighbors regarding, I think it was the trees and what kind, I mean, today is a great, if during this next part of this hearing, if you want to make suggestions on what trees you think would grow well at the property, this is probably the most convenient place to get feedback on the buffer. Otherwise, we can take a copy of the list that's here with everyone who signed in, and we can perhaps send an email out or some letters and ask for feedback on the trees. As for like if that pond is getting too much water and you think it's because of the solar farm, yeah, I mean, absolutely talk to the zoning administrator, say we think they're in violation of their special use permit because they're discharging water. They would investigate. We don't think it would be our fault because as Ben said, these pollinators that are going to go in are going to be better for the stormwater. But if maybe it is it could be a drain tile that was hit and not flagged. You never know what could happen. And if that's our responsibility, then we would have to fix it. And so I think there would be an investigation that would have to come through the zoning office relating to this special use permit. And also, the zoning office probably talk to stormwater, at Water Resources and say, hey, can you go out there and figure out what the problem is? Is that caused by the solar farm or something else? So I think that those are the 2 questions. You want to talk about the access drive?
Yeah, access drive here. So the access drive that we propose in green here is going to be both the construction access. So this will be where all those vehicles will be going in and out during construction and during the long-term operations of the system too. During the actual operations of the system, you wouldn't have someone out there every day. You might see someone maybe once a week just to do routine maintenance or checking on things. If they're not mowing, if they're mowing, then you'd see them out there too for that. But those would be sharing the same access, both construction and long-term. The property value, so we commissioned this report from a group called Cohn Resnick out of Chicago. They do these reports for all sorts of new developments and infrastructure. The reason we like these reports is because they are the experts and they consult with the experts, the assessors, brokers, real estate agents, and look at those data and they comb through those and they pull up those comps and arrive at those insights. And we like that because they do that and they can speak to that. All we can do on the development side is rely on their expertise for those opinions there. I'm not sure if I missed any of your questions.
I think you got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to ask questions? Then we'll move on to the staff report.
All right, let me switch over to my report here. So the subject property is zoned A1 Agricultural District. It is surrounded by A1 agriculture zoning with the exception of E1 estate zoning on that Chucker Place subdivision in that area there. The subject property is currently used for agriculture as well as single-family residential. To the north is agriculture use, to the south is agricultural and single-family residential. To the east is agricultural and single-family residential with 1 vacant lot, and to the west is agriculture. The future land use designation for this property and the entire surrounding area here is residential, with some designation for environmentally sensitive areas. If I had anything additional, just to make note, I know we mentioned this area along near Dean Street. There are actually 2 solar farms under construction currently. You can actually see it in the background of the zoning sign there. It looks really close. But yeah, there is one off of Dean Street as well, north and south of this project area. The zoning sign was posted properly, and I do believe that all of the state and county regulations have been met for this project.
Does anyone have a question?
Madam Chairman, you have indicated that on the property you have the road.
Staff?
Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake, because you wouldn't know. I mean, it's not, it's past that, yeah.
I have a staff question.
Okay.
If these people choose to come back and want to install battery storage, does that mean they need to do a whole new separate CUP? Do they need to go through staff and hearings and so on and so forth?
Yes, it would be an all-new application for a conditional use amendment.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, if we have to do this again.
Yes.
Kim, would you just go through how the county does manage, what they'll have to do like for stormwater and everything? So to kind of reassure the neighbors to the east that, what the county standards are.
Yeah, so once the applicants apply for the building permit with our department, with planning and development, it will need to meet the requirements of the stormwater management ordinance. So they will take a look at the drain tile survey. If a wetland delineation is required, they'll take a look at that. They're going to do a full review for compliance with the stormwater management ordinance, and anything that is not compliant would be flagged at that time. And then, just like was mentioned, if during the operations there's any kind of concerns with runoff or broken tiles or anything like that, most likely our department would be made aware, and our Water Resources Division would be looking into that to make sure that it is kept in compliance during operations.
And if there is a problem, what happens then?
They would most likely be flagged through our violations, code enforcement, and would need to fix the problem, bring it up to compliance. Otherwise, it jeopardizes the validity of the conditional use permit.
Does anyone else have a question for staff? Okay, so at this time, we'll take any statements on by members of the public. If you have a statement you'd like to make regarding this petition, again, you have 3 minutes. You'll need to, again, give your name and address, and we'll be happy to listen to your comments. So anyone who would like to speak, raise your hand. Okay, sir, come on up.
Again, I'm Bernie Unsner. I own with my wife, Rita, 5 acres. I just want to do something briefly. We've been there since 1947 when Mom and Dad bought the property. My experience with industrial application is quite large. I worked as a, my last place was 31 years at the pharmaceutical plant, working with industrial automation. So I understand large automation applications. I don't want to go into the extreme details in it. One of my questions I wanted to ask and I couldn't is I forgot, is what kind of voltage is coming off of it, 3-phase, and how many amps type thing, and are there any talks of putting batteries in there at a later date? And what's the protection that batteries will receive? Then my concern is, obviously this is very difficult to understand how you guys can operate like this. It's hard to hear you guys, hard to hear the conversations. Why don't we have an intercom in here? I'm embarrassed for you guys for that. But my point is, and I'm hoping I can talk loud enough to say this, is we had a peaker plant that was going in on Perkins Road, on Dean Street Road. It was publicized. What happened? It was publicized and nobody wanted it because, quote, it made too much noise and the environment impact and everything else. It was a steam powered by natural gas. It was shot down. The other question is, do people know what load shedding is? Load shedding, brownouts and blackouts and that sort of thing. What kind of power are we receiving off of this? Is it a steady power, or is it consistently power dependent on the environment? Say there is sun there or no sun. I understand that solar can actually work when a cloudy day. I understand the technology keeps changing, and that's a good thing. The cost of putting solar on 1 acre is $300,000 and $700,000 per acre. It pays for the engineering, the equipment, the installation. Who pays for the installation? Well, it's the investors, solar developers, investors in energy companies. But basically, in a nutshell, us taxpayers are paying those investors. Some of those investors are banks. So your high interest rates at the bank is helping pay for some of this stuff. Is this actually a profitable entity? No. The reason why I say is because of the amount of power it consumes is not as good as the power as a turbine, wind turbine. Thank you.
Anyone else like to make a statement?
Scott Kunze, 3415 Chucker. I guess as long as I'm here, I'll comment on 2 procedural things. I really appreciate what all of you board members do. Bernie was absolutely correct. We're not too far. We couldn't hear a lot of you guys. So something for future. We moved up as much as we could. Something, make sure that somehow mics are in so everybody can hear, because obviously this is very important. And then the other thing I would add is planning and development came and make a statement, and her statement could have been a lot longer depending on what this was. If we were doing a peaker plant, she could have sat here for a half hour and talked. I personally believe that her statement should have come before the questions and answering, because she said something that could spark a question, which it did, and nobody got a chance to address it or ask it. So just 2 things to keep in mind, as long as I'm here. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just have a question. I'm Lily Schnorr. I don't live in McHenry County. I was raised on
You
the farm.
can't ask questions right now, but you can make a statement. This is the time for statements.
I am wondering as to how safe solar farms are when people live close to the area.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to make a statement? Yes, go ahead.
Sure, I'll do it. I'll do a wrap-up one. Again, I am still Diane Magnuson. So
And your address?
My address is 3316 or 3409 Chucker. Okay, so I'm encouraged by the questions that the board has asked because you covered some of mine. I think that I have thoughts about how to work with the neighbors who aren't able to be here because they're all employed. And maybe we can all do more as a group to work together to make this better. It is a hell of a lot better than 250 houses. And I'd love to see trees there, and I encourage that. Let me know how I can help. Thank you. And thanks, kids.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir, come on up.
Steve Soltis, 13214 Perkins. I'm not against you guys doing this, but I just don't think solar is the answer to our problem. And you said it yourself, this thing's peak generating time is between noon and 4. Even if you extend that with batteries, we need things that work 24 hours a day, and this isn't it. We're just spending money on building these things, and what's the goal here? I'm not against you doing it. I realize why you're doing it. You're trying to lease your property. I get that. You guys are building this thing because you're getting paid to do it. I get that. But this thing doesn't solve anyone's problem. It really doesn't. That's all I can say. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, do you have a closing statement? And maybe in your closing statement, you might talk a little bit about the electricity that's coming out of there, just to address the one gentleman's question.
Yeah, well, very short closing statement, I'll say, yeah, targeted perhaps. So yeah, thank you for hearing us today and for all the members of the public to come out and to speak and to share questions and ask questions of us. I'm sorry about the acoustics in here. It is, hard for projecting that way when I feel like half the time I should be talking to everybody. I ask that the board, support this project with your votes today. This project conforms to all the standards set forth by the county and the UDO, as well as the state requirements. In many ways, we've exceeded some of those setbacks and requirements as well. Speaking and we tend to, I think, design around some of these questions and comments that we get from neighbors and folks. Again, we don't want to put projects up into people's backyards directly, and we want to be mindful of setbacks and screening and things like that. So we greatly appreciate everyone's perspectives. I'm sure this board has heard a lot about safety and solar over the past however many years. Solar projects at their face are very safe. Typically, what you see with solar projects that have issues are ones that are mounted onto a rooftop of like a commercial building that are never looked at or evaluated or maintained properly. Projects like these that are ground mounted, they're maintained, they're monitored 24/7 as we spoke about earlier, and they're always being basically assessed to ensure there is no issues from like a fire perspective or a voltage issue or something of that nature. Just to make a remark to the gentleman who had the comment about the types of power and solar really not meeting the needs of the grid. And I don't disagree with them at all. I wish that we had more base load power in Illinois. Fred's family worked for ComEd for a long time. He knows. I wish we had more of that. It was actually not even legal to build new nuclear plants in Illinois up until I think the governor signed into law new legislation that folks had worked really hard on. So I think there's an appreciation that we need more electricity. Agreed that solar doesn't solve all the issues, but I think we fundamentally have an electricity and an energy problem, not just in this country, but we have a really profound one in Illinois with some of the policy that's happened here over the years. So I think more power is good, and maybe this isn't the answer to everything, but it does help offset, I think, the greater issue of just needing more power as a whole. So anyways, thank you again, everyone, for your time, and we ask for your support for this project.
This time we'll close the hearing portion of this meeting and we'll move on to the voting portion. We have some proposed conditions that are all in your packets that were provided by staff and also have been on the website so the public could see what these proposed conditions were as well. If there is no opposition, I'm not going to read through each of them individually. Hearing no opposition, I won't read them. Does anyone have any new proposed conditions?
I am debating if I should condition the landscaping.
Do you want to put it out there and then we'll discuss it?
Yeah, let's say 20 feet apart but staggered.
I'll
So-
second that motion.
Are you amending number 5?
Yes.
Or you? So Ms. Gardner is making a motion to amend condition number 5 to state that landscape screening would be in, what is it again now? It's staggered.
20 feet apart but staggered into 2 rows.
Just on the eastern property line, that
Just,
particular
yeah,
segment.
just where it's mentioned on here.
So again, would this be just on the property line to the east by the residences,
Yes.
not against the panels themselves?
Right.
Okay. And you're fine with that? Second?
I'll second it for some discussion.
Okay. Discussion, Ms. Gardner.
I think that I still encourage the petitioners to get in contact with the neighbors and come to some agreement so that everybody is aware of what's happening and what can be done and so on and so forth. But I do think that the 25 feet apart, as suggested initially, was not enough. I feel that leaves too much of a gap for too long of a period. So the suggestion from the audience to will not only shorten the distance between, but also to stagger them so that it makes a more continuous line. Makes a lot of sense.
I'll go along with that too.
Yes.
Mr. Cozen, do you have any comments on this?
I'd just like to add to the point, I too support the prohibition of putting any kind of mounds or application of an artificial hill. Prior experiences show that not only imposes a difficulty with stormwater and surface drainage, but it impedes the root growth. As to the staggering, I support that wholeheartedly because it offsets the bottom crown of the landscaping so they're not growing into one another. And the best examples I draw from are the numerous gravel pits in and around Algonquin Township, and you can see the maturity and the benefit of having that type of landscaping. Hence my second to that motion.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Again, the I is to amend number 5 to the more current language. Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Yes.
Mr. Dahlman?
Yes.
Mr. Kernick?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so the amendment passes to number 5. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve all the conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Gardner and seconded by Mr. Kernick to approve all the conditions. Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Aye.
Mr. Dahlman?
Yes.
Mr. Kernick?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So the conditions are approved 7-0. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
I move by Ms. Gardner, seconded by Mr. Schnabel to approve this request. Discussion.
Okay, this is for application Z250112, approximately 155 acres, 40 of which will be used as solar farm. This is located 1,300 feet west of Dean Street on 13814 Perkins Road in Woodstock. I believe all the standards have been met. I want to let you know I appreciate your presentation. It was very thorough. You answered all of the questions very well. I would encourage the audience to get on the county website and look at the presentation online. You'll learn a lot about solar and solar farms. And unfortunately, you might have more questions then, but too late. Also, I appreciate the fact that this petitioner is very willing to work with the neighbors to come to agreement with how to screen and how to keep everybody happy. Other than that, I want to say that this is a project that seems really pretty straightforward. There are residences involved, but not a lot, and you will work with them and you will make sure everybody's happy, or we'll hear about it. And I appreciate the fact that your access goes right up the middle and that your equipment is based as close to central as possible so that any noise will be not heard by any neighbors. With all those thoughts in mind, I want to say I am in agreement with this proposal.
Mr. Cozen?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be supporting this application. My comment briefly, as I'll try to be, is that zoning is a very difficult tool that we have to evaluate the most contemporary technology that is before us, both in our county and elsewhere. I reside in the most dense township of the county, Algonquin Township, and my residence as it is surrounded on all 3 sides by rooftop solars. And yet I have greater confidence that the applicant is more responsive to to those panels that he is installing than my three neighbors, who I have yet to see take any care or concern to the interconnects that are on the side of their homes and barely 75 feet from one another. But it is not that point that I wish to bring to. It is the public record. The public record of this, as is mentioned, is readily accessible in today's day and age. One does not even have to leave the comfort of their home to see 363 pages of detail. And during the construction and application of this facility, that record will remain accessible, including the bond and the deed that will be available for 40 years. It will be easier to find the details of what transpired today than those drainage tile records, and who has the maintenance of those drainage tile records, and the performance of those drainage tile records, even upon this oncoming spring and the water that will certainly be there. And for those convergence of information, I'll be supporting this application. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Schnabel.
I agree with what's been said. You gave us a very well-done presentation without a lot of extra fluff that we sometimes also receive. And I believe you've met all the state and county standards, and therefore I support the petition.
Ms. Donner?
I will be supporting the petition as well.
Mr. Dahlman?
I'm very happy to see neighbors showing up to talk here. I think that's an open dialogue that has started. You need to continue it. This is an ongoing project. It's not done today. This is step one. There's a lot of steps to get this done. Keep talking to each other, keep those lines of communication open. And I'm a proponent of solar power. I've had it on 2 of my residences. So yeah, I'll be supporting this.
Mr. Koenig?
I agree with everything that's been said. I would just add the additional comment that it's not our role to decide whether or not solar energy is a good idea or not. That's already been decided by the General Assembly. And our county board has passed ordinances that are consistent with the mandate of the General Assembly allowing solar panels. And as long as the conditions set forth in our Unified Development Ordinance 16.56.030 PP are satisfied, it is our obligation to apply that law in this case. I will be supporting the petition as well.
And I agree with all the colleagues of with all the comments of my colleagues, and believe the standards have been met, and so I am in favor of this petition as well. So at this time, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Gartner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Aye.
Mr. Dahlman?
Yes.
Mr. Koenig?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so this will go to the county board with a 7-0 vote approving this request. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this process.